Today I want to show in Microsoft Excel how to run basic descriptive statistics. So we're going to show how Excel can be used as a calculator, and not only that, we're going to show how you can use certain functions such as average and standard deviation to find descriptive stats like the mean and standard deviation, mode, the count, the sum, and then I'll show how to use the data analysis Toolpak to run descriptive statistics on your data set as well. Okay, so first we need a data set. So I'm going to come here to A2 and I'm going to use my RandBetween function, which is a great function to use to generate a data set. It's a random number generator, and this time I want to randomly generate numbers between 40 and 55. And I'm going to put them in A2. I'm going to start in A2 because when I run my data analysis Toolpak at the end, I'll need to have an empty cell above my data set. Okay, so I'm going to go from 43 or A2. I need 30 of these things. So I'm going to go down to A31, and there I have 30 randomly generated numbers. Now the problem is if I run any sort of calculation over here, that randomly generated set changes. So to avoid that from happening, I'm going to highlight all this, copy, and in column B I'm going to paste special. So I'm going to just paste the values, and so now I do not, if you notice my function bar, it says 44, 45. It doesn't have the actual RandBetween function that you get from column A. Alright, now to show how Excel is a calculator, I want to just run some basic calculations. Let's do some adding, let's do some subtracting, divide and multiply. And I'm just going to pick some from my data set. So in the calculator, to access the calculator, you hit equals, and I could just do like 4 plus 6, for example. But if I actually want to reference my data set, I can just reference the numbers by the cell that they're in. So for example, I could add, I don't know, let's say B6 plus B11. And now you notice before I hit enter, B6 and B11 are highlighted just so I know that I'm using the cells that I want. Hit equals, and there's their sum. If I want to subtract, it's just the same thing. B6 minus B11, you get -8. If I wanted to divide, make sure you don't divide by 0, but other than that we should be okay. So let's say B23 divided by B19, there's that value. And if I want to multiply, how about B15 times is done with asterisk B12. So there's the multiplication. Alright, now for some descriptive statistics, I'll show you how to, not descriptive states, descriptive stats. I'll show you how to calculate the mean. Well, actually, let's do the sum, the mean. How about the standard deviation? Let's do the mode. How about the count? So that way we know how many things, the size of my sample size. Now, notice here that descriptive stats and standard deviation, those words kind of bleed over into the next cell. So if I run some sort of calculation over here, it'll override and see it cuts off descriptive stats. If I want to see that, I can go up to the top of my D column, and when I get this kind of double arrow cursor, just double click and it'll spread out to the width that I need. Okay, so for sum, to add up all the numbers in my data set, I just hit equals, sum, open parentheses, and now notice it says I need a number 1, a number 2, etc. So the numbers I want go from B2 to B31. So I hit colon, B31, close parentheses, and there's the sum of all those numbers. Alright, now for the mean, I use the average function. And other than that, it's the same as the sum. So I say B1 colon, I'm sorry, not B1, B2 colon B31. And again, you can see this blue rectangle shows that I am highlighting the data set that I want. Enter. There's the mean. Standard deviation equals STDEV. Now notice there's an STDEV.P, that's for population, and .S. So I'm going to use .S since we have a small sample. I think you'll get a more accurate result. We'll go from B2 to B21. I'm sorry, B31. And there's my standard deviation. Mode, I go to MODE.MULT, B2 to B21. Oops. And you can see I keep saying 21. I don't know why. But you notice that this blue rectangle does not cover my data set, so that's how I know I'm making a mistake. So I change that to 31, and now I have it. And lastly, the count is just use the count function. So count B2, let's see if I get it right this time, B31, good. And that tells me I have 30 things in my sample size, or my sample space. Great. Now, the data analysis Toolpak, if you remember we put that on in our first video, will allow me to run all these descriptive statistics simultaneously. So let me show you how to do that. Alright, so I go to Data, and in the far right you have Data Analysis, and we have all these things that show up. The one that I want, we used histogram in the last video. This time I want to use descriptive statistics. So hit OK. Now I need an input range. That means what's my data set. So I click on this button and I go from B2, scroll all the way down to B31. And if you notice in the toolbar here it says B2 to B31. I want my stats labeled, so I say label in first row. Oh, and actually I made a mistake here already. My input range needs to include an empty cell at the beginning. So instead of going from B2, I actually want to start at B1. Okay, now I want an output. I want my table to show up. You could have this show up in a new workbook or a new worksheet, but I want an output range inside my spreadsheet here. So I'm going to click right here on D16. And I want summary statistics. Okay, so I hit OK. Here it is. It generates this table. Here's my mean. And notice it's consistent with what we calculated earlier. I actually get a median, a mode, standard deviation, the variance, things that we won't deal with like kurtosis and skewness, a range. We have the minimum and the maximum. We have the sum and the count. So all this stuff was calculated just through my data analysis Toolpak. I hope this helps. I hope it makes sense, and I hope that you can see how this would be valuable information in the future. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I'll be glad to help. And I hope, again, I hope this helps.